Welcome. Come on in. We've been expecting you. Grab a chair and pull it up next to the table right next to us. Glad you could make it for real food, real people. Your oasis in these interesting times. I'm Pat, your host. Shay is dry aging somewhere in a meat locker, but she'll be back soon. And this is producer Doug.
Hey,
Not aging in a meat locker
no.
somewhere. And today we have a guest, brand new to the show and pretty new to us. It is Mr. Greg Rempe, the host of the Barbecue Central Show out of Cleveland, Ohio. Hi, Greg.
Hi, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here, and I'm glad I'm not dry aging in a meat locker.
Aren't we all? Actually, it's been so warm around here.
Yeah.
It's cold in there, isn't it? Maybe
Yeah.
that would be a good thing.
For a few minutes.
Oh dear. You have an interesting show, and we've kind of binge listened actually. Is that okay to say that?
Absolutely, binge all you want, especially on my shows.
Absolutely. And we've enjoyed all of your guests and things, but why don't you give us a little rundown of what your show is about?
So I am what I would term the ESPN of the barbecue and grilling industry. So if you hear the name of the Barbecue Central Show and you think that I'm going to be teaching you how to cook and giving you all of these intricate recipes and stuff that you would see on the Food Network, it is not that. It would be like tuning into Sports Center. So I'm going to talk to competition pit masters. I'm going to talk to the people that make the barbecue pits and the grills and all the accessories, the rubs and sauces, the cookbook authors, the bloggers, anybody that has their finger in the live fire industry. If they're tipping the meter, then they will make it on the show. And I try and make a lively show each and every week. We have recurring guests. We have a bunch of new guests also during the course of the year. And then I try to add my subjectively perverse humor to the show.
We enjoy it.
Thank you.
What platform is your show on?
Well, I'm a multi-global platform, really. So I have a live audio feed. So if you want to tune into the show, it's a live show now, Tuesdays from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern.
Yes.
So
Glad
when
you
that
put that in there.
as in like perhaps tomorrow night between 9 and 11, you can hear the show live as it's happening, as it's unfolding. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Hijinks, shenanigans are afoot, no doubt. At the same time, I'm streaming
and wait,
video. Yeah.
and fun.
Fun and frivolity.
Yes.
So
Lots of fun and frivolity.
I'm live video streaming to YouTube, to Facebook, and to Twitch. I also have that live audio stream. And then on top of that, I'm recording. Now, once you end the video at the end of the night, that automatically archives on whatever platform you're at. People can have at it. But I'm also recording audibly. And then I take the first hour and make that a release on Wednesdays. I take the second hour, make that a release on Thursdays. And because I've been doing it for so long, I think we're now 190 episodes into the best moments of the Barbecue Central Show in 10 minutes or less. So every Friday, a friend of mine, John Solberg, who I've contracted, he's my Michigan embedded correspondent, by the way. He puts together the best of show every week. And this coming Friday will be 191 episodes. So I think between my show and then the subsequent best of show, we have to have 2 of the 5 longest running barbecue related podcasts ever. And they're really mostly about me, which I love.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great history and an encouragement for people that, maybe it's a tough field when they're just getting started because, everybody's got a podcast these days. But find your niche. And, that's kind of how I feel about this show is, we're still kind of looking for our niche, but, do you and don't be like everyone else. And,
The most important part for anybody out there that's listening to Real Food, Real People that are sitting alongside the table with us, if you think you want to start a podcast and the first few thoughts that follow that are, I want to make money, I want to get rich, I'm going to make a lot of money, anything that has to do with money, I'm going to do my best right now to talk you out of podcasting.
Well, I do have some questions from a few of our listeners.
All right.
That maybe you didn't already know, but I'm sure you have gleaned from your guests the answers to these questions. What do you got for us first one?
Okay, so our friend Peyton says, I've heard the long-standing debate about whether charcoal grills are better than gas grills. My question would be, which is better, or do both produce equal results? Personally, I tend to like gas grills.
I am a long-standing subscriber to owning as many different live fire cooking vessels as you are possibly allowed to own, either through economics or a loved one allowing you to own so many. Because why limit yourself? If you can have a charcoal grill and a gas grill, you now have two units that can cook differently than each other. In a lot of ways, they can cook similarly to each other, but you have two cooking vessels. You can do one style of cooking in the charcoal grill, and at the same time, you can do something else in the gas grill if you're entertaining, or
Yeah.
you're having some kind of a get together, or if you're just doing something for you and your loved one, just two people there. There's no reason why you can't use two grills or four grills all at the same time, because you can do different things. You can assign them different tasks. So
Absolutely.
I'm not skirting around the answer here. I have a gas grill. I absolutely love it. I use it a whole bunch. I think if people look down on the gas grill users, then those people have a problem with themselves. Gas grills are widely the most popular grills in the United States. They're very convenient. If you hear people say, well, I don't like the flavor that gas grills put on my meat, that's a bunch of horse crap. Gas flavor your meat. That's completely false. Don't believe that. Now, charcoal cooking does impart a different flavor
Yeah.
than you would be able to get from gas grilling. I like it, but I have 4 ladies in the house, 3 daughters and a wife, and they're not overly fanatic about the charcoal flavor. So I have to pick my spots on how I'm going to use that cooker. And more times than not, I'll go to gas grill. But again, every grill has its purpose. A kettle cooker or a kettle charcoal grill does give you some easier options to go from a high heat grilling vessel to more of a low and slow barbecue type because of how you can work the fuel and the air dampers on the top and bottom. You can also roast at that medium temperature and at 375, 400 degrees. So I call the Weber charcoal kettle grill the gateway drug into barbecue because you can do so many things with it, and you can just have one unit. But eventually you'll graduate out of that into multiple units. But it's still like one of the best cookers out there. So
Isn't that
I
how we
think-
got started?
Yeah.
I think you can love both. You're definitely allowed to love both. It's not a competition. It's what your palate likes. That's what you should be trusting first and foremost. And if you like the taste of that, then F everybody else.
Yeah, and we have found that again, our kind of our redneck way of doing things. We had we actually had a real Weber at the beginning, didn't we?
Yep.
And then we decided it didn't have a big enough cooking surface, so we went to kind of a knockoff that was a lot bigger, and eventually the legs rusted off.
Yeah.
But the rest of it was still in really good shape, and we have a brick fireplace out back that thing just sits on perfectly. So we still
Wonderful.
use it nested on top of our brick fireplace. And we also have a gas grill. But I think in the long run, I prefer, the gas grill is faster to get started. But when we have time, I really like using the kettle. And we use lump coal. And maybe you could educate me here, because my understanding is briquettes has glue in it that holds the briquette together.
Yeah, I mean, there is a binder in the charcoal briquette, but there's also just the way that it's made. Charcoal briquettes are more made of coal dust, and then they have that binder. They're put into molds and pressed into that briquette form and then dumped out. Whereas lump charcoal, if nobody's ever seen it before, if we burned a house down to guts and we were walking through it and we were picking up the charred remains of the house, that's what lump charcoal looks like. In its essence, that's what's happened. They cut down wood splits, they put them in these retorts, which is like a big furnace, and they cook all the moisture out of them. It carbonizes the wood, and now you have lump charcoal. So if you're going to ask me to pick a side, I can certainly dance around that very tenderly. If I want to do a long cook, I will use briquettes because the size is uniform. I know how much heat I'm getting per briquette, and I will use overnight cooks. I almost exclusively use briquettes. On something that's only going to be a couple hours or even less, then I'll use lump charcoal because lump charcoal burns much hotter. There's a lot less
Oh.
ash production than you would get from briquettes. And I personally like the flavor that you could get from some kinds of lump charcoals. Meathead from AmazingRibs.com always says you shouldn't be using charcoal as a flavoring agent. It should only be used as a heat source. But on some lump charcoal, because of the wood that it's made out of, you might get just a little bit of a smoky perfuming as well.
Mhm.
I hadn't thought about that because, everyone's into their apple chips or pecan chips or, hickory chips or whatever that you smoke with. But it never occurred to me to wonder what wood the lump charcoal is made out of.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should we also have a wood stove. We should just harvest some of the wood out of there when we go dump the ash.
My pal in Michigan makes his own lump charcoal. I mean, you can do it. It's pretty simple. It's just putting in the effort. And it's like anything else. He calls it cooking charcoal. You can overcook it. You can undercook it. But he makes it look very sexy. I've never done it, but he still makes it look pretty sexy.
We kind of dance around the edge of prepping. Well, around the edge. We're somewhat invested in prepping, actually. But we try to look at things
Like
as...
doomsday prepping?
A little bit.
When the when the crap hits the fan kind of prepping, or even we're in the Northeast. I mean, you have the power go out where you are. If you're not prepared for that, that takes a little bit of preparation too.
Yep.
But we kind of look at things like, how useful is this when you can't say a pellet smoker? When you can't buy the pellets, can you make it work with something that you could forage for? You know what I'm saying?
The answer is no.
No. Okay. So we probably won't be buying a pellet smoker. Someone might have to give us one.
Yeah. There you go. We'll take one happily.
Sure. So that's kind of where we're at with things. Or I like the idea of dual fuel type of setups. I'm trying to think of, is there one now that I think about it?
Yeah.
Like gas and charcoal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of grills made by some pretty major manufacturers like Char-Broil. Char-Griller, I think, might make one where part of that cooker is a all charcoal grill and then the other side is a gas grill, natural gas.
Oh, ours is Char-Broil, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't have ours. Isn't that fancy?
No.
Not that fancy. And I've mentioned on this show before, our smoker is an offset that Doug actually found two along the side of the road, and they both have the same issue.
Yeah.
One was smaller, and the one we're using currently was bigger, but they both rusted out or burned out in the same spot.
Yep.
Well, here's a rule of thumb on offset smokers. If somebody left them on the side of the road, it's like a box of cats. Just look at it and leave it be. Run away. We're on the side of the road for a reason, right? So if you're looking into an offset, a real offset, what you're dealing with somebody leaving on the side of the road is they probably purchased it from a big box store for $300, $400. Super thin, built with crap tolerance. It's drafty as hell. You can't keep temperature control in it, and it becomes frustrating enough where you take both of them and leave them on the side of the road and wait for Doug.
Somebody else.
So when you invest in a real, true Texas offset pit, now you're talking about 1/4-inch steel. The tolerances are super tight. Firebox might even be 3/8 inch. It might be insulated, but you're also looking at $1,700, $1,800 to start with a 36-inch pipe. If you go bigger than that, obviously the price is going to go up. Now, you might say that's a lot of money, but you're going to buy that, and that's going to be it. That's going to sit on the back porch for the rest of your life and for the rest of whoever you're going to hand that down to's life. As long as you take a minimum amount of care, there's no electrics in it. There's no moving parts in it. There's some hinges that you got to keep greased. You want to make sure that the inside stays nice and taken care of. But other than that, this thing will just stick around forever and ever. It's 1/4-inch steel. That's what it's made to do, cook and be around forever. People want to buy cheap because it looks like what they want it. But once they get it home, it doesn't act like it should. And then that's where people... And if that's the first cooker you buy, then you might become frustrated and not be a fan. You might not come into the live fire industry. And I don't want that. That's a fan of my show that might have gotten frustrated and just walks away. I don't want that.
Well, we've had enough success with it that we're not turned off. We're somewhat determined to master this little pile of crap.
Well, here's the good news. The internet provides all the information that you need. So if you know what brand it is or what kind it is, you can Google blah, blah, blah mods. And then it will show you to go get, flex hose, like from a dryer, and you would, take it from where the stack begins inside the chamber and put it down. Now it's going to help with the draw. And, all of a sudden you're spending $500 in modifications on a $500 grill, and you're like, what the hell? But
Yeah, really.
certainly there are ways to make it cook better that people have muscled through already and are sharing their information at will on YouTube.
Yeah. And especially with the DIY stuff and the build your own whatever things out there's a lot of people trying to make stuff into other things online. So that's kind of where we get a lot of our information too. But the great thing the first time we used it, we took the thermometer off the chimney stack on our wood stove, which is magnetic, and stuck it to the smoker, and all of a sudden we had a thermometer.
Yeah, there you go.
Although it didn't give us the internal temperature, but now we have.
It gave us a starting.
It helped, and now we have a remote thermometer, so we have to try that out. We haven't. It gives us hope.
Thermometers are key in everything, in cooking, in monitoring your cooking temperatures of your pit. If you don't have temperatures, you're really operating blind, and you're only asking for disaster.
Yeah.
Okay, another question from a listener. This is from our friend De Gerber, and he says that he is a fan of his vertical propane smoker. What are the selling points of charcoal, like Green Egg, electric, like Green Mountain, and just kind of wondering, why would you choose one over another? Kind of similar to the first question.
So I think that's kind of a lot in one question there.
Yeah.
Propane smokers are fine. I'm not necessarily a fan myself of propane smokers, but if you have one and it works well for you, then fine. Like we were talking about gas grills and all this other stuff. If it works for you, I'm not here to hate on anybody's particular operation. When you look at a Green Egg, and that's a different monster. So now we're talking about, it's a charcoal-driven device, but it's not charcoal like a Weber Smoky Mountain or a Charbroil bullet-style smoker. This is a ceramic cooker, and ceramic cookers are going to be more expensive. Big Green Eggs are always at the top of the price category. You can get a couple different sizes depending on how many people you're going to be cooking for. But the thing that you have to take into account when you're looking at a Big Green Egg is this is two cookers in one. When the ceramics heat up, if you're running low and slow on a load of charcoal, which might only be 3 or 4 pounds, if that, you can get 18 hours, 20 hours of burn time out of a load of charcoal because the ceramics heat up, becomes very fuel efficient. It's very miserly as far as the fuel consumption is concerned, so that's good. And high heat cooks, well, that's the other thing. So you can do low and slow really well. That's one style of cooker. That's a smoker. Well, then you can rip open the bottom dampers and the top daisy wheel on the top of that thing and get it up to 800 degrees. And now you're cooking high heat grilling, steaks and thinner cuts and dogs and chops and all that other stuff. And you can close it all down right when you're done. And the lack of air will suffocate the coals. Well, you can reuse those again next time. And depending on how long you cook on that time, you can reuse them again for a third time. So ceramic cookers have a number of benefits that you have to make sure you understand when you're going to buy that cooker, because a lot of people get sticker shock. And within that oh shit moment, as they see how much the XL Big Green Egg costs, they run away from it. But they don't realize that can be 2 cookers or 3 cookers in one. You can do pizza in it. You can do everything. You can bake in it, of course. So and then when he references the Green Mountain Grill, it's electric, but that's a pellet cooker. So you need the wood pellet to cook those. You need electricity to cook those. You can get electricity in a number of different ways. You can get a Lion Energy a solar pack thing and be as green as you could possibly be when it comes to electric. You can bring a car battery and take the clips and flip them onto the battery, run it that way. Or you can plug it into the side of the house like normal people would do if that's the only way you have access. They also, a lot of these higher end Green Mountain grills have 12-volt converters. So you can, if you were at a parking lot and you have a car, you just stick it into the 12-volt receptacle in your car and you can power that grill and away you go. So there are a number of different ways to get the electricity to that, but you have to have electricity to make it go. and you
Yeah.
have to have the wood grade food pellets. And the benefit there is you're getting a what I would call a light smoke flavor. Pellet cookers are notoriously light on smoke. You're not going to get the same kind of smoke profile that you would get on an offset cooker because of the way they burn. But a lot of people don't like heavy smoke, and a pellet cooker is right up those folks' alleys. Give you a little bit of a perfuming, but nothing overwhelming.
Okay.
And I did not answer that question very well, but those are the differences in the cookers. One isn't better. Again, he should keep his his propane cooker, but buy a Green Mountain grill, and he should buy a Big Green Egg, and he should buy a Texas offset if he wants to. That way, he has everything.
There you go. And I want to give a little shout out to DeGare Bear because he's the one that tuned us into listening to Malcolm Reed from what is his show?
How to barbecue right.
How to Barbecue Right, and we enjoy watching him too.
He's
So,
great.
so thanks to Gare Bear. And if nothing else, rats. I'll have to save this for the other half. Anyway, we're gonna go refill our coffee cups and bring them back to the table, and we're gonna see you on the other side after we listen to our sponsors. So, thanks, Greg, for all your information, and we got more questions for you coming right up. Today we have with us Melissa from Tastin' Jamaican.
Well, thank you, Pat. I do want to tell everybody about Tastin' Jamaican Caribbean style salsa. It's made with mango, lime, brown sugar, a little touch of smoke in it. And so it has a unique flavor that is not like your Mexican style salsas.
And there's all kinds of flavors. What are the flavors you got?
We decided that we would go the whole way and just do a mild, medium, a hot, and an extra hot. Our initial flavor was a hot salsa, and it was made with ghost pepper. We call that nuclear. That one, everyone tells us, is the perfect blend of heat and sweet. And then we have Cuban. We do strawberry in the spring. We do a blueberry peach in the summer. For the fall, we have the pumpkin spice. And then we have a cranberry, which is for around Christmas. What we want to do is offer the people that are listening to your podcast a 15% discount, and the code will be real food. Yeah, and so they can find us on our website. We are on tastinjamaican.com.
Here's our friend and former guest, Joe Boreal.
Hey guys, welcome to my kitchen. Another big exciting day in my kitchen. Where are we going? We need some olive oil. I would want something from Italy. I want something earthy. I want something really grassy. I want something with some robust flavor in there. And the best olive oil in the world comes from Puglia, Italy, which is right above the heel. And I happen to own a farm there. We co-op with a whole group of farms in that whole region to bring you some of the best extra virgin Italian olive oil you're ever gonna have. I named the company after my two boys, Vito and Joe. And you guys can go to my Facebook page or my webpage, Cooking Italian with Joe, and just click olive oil, buy it now, and we'll literally drop ship you, I don't know, if you're feeling crazy, right? 3, 4, 5 bottles of olive oil, we'll drop ship it right to your front doorstep. I like to think of it as taking a trip to Italy right in a bottle.
You can find Joe on YouTube at Cooking Italian with Joe. Well, we're back. Thanks for waiting for us. We've got a lot more questions for Mr. Greg Rempe, host of, the Barbecue Central Show. But right now, we're going to have Doug tell you how to get in touch with us, because that's more important. No, it isn't. I'm sorry.
Of course, you want to check us out on Facebook at Real Food, Real People Show, and our Facebook group is the same name. If you're on Twitter, find us at RealFoodPat1 and at RealFoodShay, and use the hashtag RealFoodRealPeople to share recipes and photos. Look for us on Instagram at Real Food, Real People Show, and of course you can email us at realfoodrealpeopleshow@gmail.com with your recipes, comments, and show suggestions. You can listen to us every day on Spoonie.com at 7 p.m. and 1 a.m. Eastern, and anytime you have time on Spreaker, iHeart, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music Podcasts. If you can't get enough of us, sometimes we post a second helping, and you can check that out too.
And Greg, tell everybody how to get in touch with you.
The website is thebbqcentralshow.com. Facebook is /BBQ Central Show. YouTube is /RD Rempe, which is lame. I don't even want to talk about it. Twitter at BBQ Central Show, TikTok at BBQ Central Show, Snapchat at BBQ Central because I'm a dope and forgot to put show when I signed up. And I think is that all of them? Twitter, Instagram at BBQ Central Show as well. And then the live show is every Tuesday from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern. You can find it over on those Facebook pages and YouTubes and Twitch pages. Twitch, by the way, is /BBQ Central Show as well. And then you can subscribe to the podcast on any podcast platform by just searching the BBQ Central Show. And away you go.
All right. Go give it a shot. It's a lot of fun. Before we
Can I
move on,
interrupt?
what's that?
Can I interrupt just for 1 second?
Absolutely.
Listen to a show all the way through. And if you don't like it, listen to the next show. And if you don't like that, listen to the next show and continue on in that form. Please. I'm asking you to give me a chance.
You're bound to find something you like.
That's right.
Eventually. But there really is a lot of fun and frivolity. How you see that special way you say it?
Frivolity.
Frivolity. I want to say a little something about a friend, Sean, who has been developing a barbecue sauce for the last several years. And he was saying that he's on the verge of coming up with ways to market it.
Mhm.
And I heard you say on one of your shows that you will rate people's sauces. Can you say a little bit about that?
I mean, there was a time where I was getting 3 and 4 bottles of sauce a week. People saying, hey, can you
Yay.
make your sauce? But here's what I would say. If you really love your barbecue sauce and you already have it ready to go, you've gotten all the hard stuff out of the way, and you're just ready to bring it to market, and you want me to try it, and you want me to talk about it on the show, then I would say this. If there is even a shade of liquid smoke in there, you're going to be working at the deficit. I don't particularly like it. In fact, I hate it. I've nicknamed it the devil's urine. So if it's in there, I can smell it. I can. Now, in some cases, after it goes on food or if it gets some heat put to it, because the same the cooking guy says heat changes things, sometimes that liquid smoke will get baked out of it, let's say it that way. But other times, if they're pretty heavy-handed with it, it's just going to stick around. And then it's a loser for me. I mean, it's average at best. So I prefer my sauces to not have liquid smoke. Now, not to contradict myself, but I love living in contradiction. The majority of barbecue sauce buyers must love it, because when you go to the grocery store, if you rip off 10 bottles randomly off the barbecue shelf there in the grocery store, and by the way, how big has that gotten over the last 5 or 6 years? I
Oh my word.
Yeah, it's turned into an aisle.
Unbelievable. I would say 10 out of 12 barbecue sauces, if you grabbed them off the aisle, will have some measure of what they call liquid smoke, or this one, natural flavoring, which is liquid smoke. They just don't want to say it in there. But you can smell it, and people must love it because the vast majority of sauces have it in there. And that's also why I learned how to make my own barbecue sauce. It doesn't have it in there. If I wanted to put it in there, I could, but I don't prefer it, so I don't have it in there.
Sure. Actually, no. So if somebody put smoked paprika in, would you interpret that as liquid smoke? Or
No,
is that
liquid
different?
smoke is its own piece of crap all on its own. It stands
It's
by
bitter.
itself. The
I
mountain
find
of crap.
it's very bitter, I think.
Now, if your buddy wants to send me a bottle of sauce, all right, I'll give it a whirl, but I will also tell everybody what I think of it. But if you don't want that to happen, don't send it to me.
All right. Well, be forewarned. So what else do we have to ask you?
Okay. Our friend Andrew Donaldson, who has been on the show recently and is the kind of the curator of hashtag Twitter Supper Club, asks, how has technology in the barbecue world changed things for the average home cooker in recent years?
Well, I think the American way is to try and not have to learn anything or have somebody else do it for you. And technology has helped in an incredible way, to the point at this stage you have Weber, who just recently went public alongside of Traeger Grills. I mean, I never thought you would see grill companies go public like that.
Yeah.
They are really trying to provide equipment, and especially Weber has gone out of their way. Their CEO, Chris Scherzinger, has gone out of his way as they were going public to say, we're trying to automate this whole cooking process for the home cook So they don't even have to know when to flip it. You'll get an alert on your phone or will ding something and say, okay, flip the meat. Okay, it's 5 seconds away from being done. Make sure you run out to the grill. Okay, now pull it off. Now let it rest for this long. Okay, now it's at target temperature. Now cut your meat. Now eat it. Chew. Don't forget to swallow.
Oh my God.
Have a drink of water.
That sounds like the rec tech.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to accomplish. And that's over the top. Really, where technology has helped is in the thermometering industry. They've made instant read meat thermometers. They've made really accurate thermometers that will give you very quick readings so you can be in and out of the grill or in and out of the barbecue pit much more quickly than you were able to in years past. The technology as far as Wi-Fi, being able to tie into your local area network with remote thermometering has vastly improved over the last 10 years. So you can be at the grocery store and you can be monitoring the temperature of the meat that's on the barbecue pit, watching it rise. They make automatic pit temperature control devices. Sponsor of my show is called the Barbecue Guru. They created that. You put this little fan at the bottom of your cooker and it will micro pulse the charcoal to keep it stoked. You can set a temperature that you want that pit to run at. And in essence, it's like a electric pit where you would set a thermostatic control, except it's using the live coals in your cooker. And then as the meat starts to ramp up in temperature, if you're not there and it's getting done too quickly, you can either adjust the temperature of the pit down so it takes longer to get to that finished temperature, or if it nails the finished temperature, you just put it into hold mode and it will run that cooker at 140 degrees, 150 degrees, keep it above where the nasties will start. You know, food safety, you want to keep it below 40 or above 140. And it's just, again, a nice piece of technology that you didn't have a number of years ago that have advanced the interest just from the general Jane and Joe public in the live fire.
Sure. Wow.
Do you think that encourages more people to get into barbecuing, or?
The answer is yes. The answer is also it seems to preclude people's interest of learning how to build and manage a fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
See, that's part of the challenge to me.
I totally agree. And when I came into this type of scene, there wasn't the want to just get to setting a temperature and doing it that way. It was almost a badge of honor to learn. We used to call it learning your pit. Whatever pit you had, you learned how to bring the temperature up in the pit to start. You learned how to stabilize it. You learned how to cook with meat in it. And if you had to go in it, how to make damper adjustments or how to refuel if you were going to have to, if it was overly long. Same thing to go with an offset pit, how to learn how to get the draft going and when you were going to need to run sticks and you're constantly cooking on that temperature arc. Those are things that I think if you want to be called a pit master, and I don't even know what the hell that term means, but to me, a pit master is going to be somebody that can go from a pellet cooker to a charcoal cooker to an offset wood stick throwing cooker and being able to operate it and produce an end product that's going to be favorable to the masses. And I think you're missing out on an element of barbecuedness by not knowing how to manage a fire, build and manage a fire, but you're also missing out on a whole romantic part of the barbecue aspect of it. I mean, there's nothing better than sitting next to a firebox and throwing a log in and watching it catch and seeing it burn down and watching the velocity of the smoke come out of the stack and knowing if your fire is running right just by how fast the smoke is coming out of the stack. It's great to be able to plug something in or set a temperature and just have it there so you can make a pretty decent end product right off the bat. But there's also something to be said for the majesty that is learning how to build and maintain a fire. I highly encourage it. A lot of people don't want to mess around with that, but if you have the option of learning it, I mean, why not have that skill? You could be out in the middle of nowhere and at least you know how to make a fire and manage it.
Exactly.
Who knows when doomsday's coming, for crying out loud, everybody.
I know it. Absolutely. So anything I feel like, you can do basic well is worth the time. And another thing I want to throw in there is I'm inspired to keep trying, even though we don't have a real fancy smoker. I keep hearing about this jiggle
On the brisket.
Yes.
Yeah.
That I can't imagine cooking something that long and there being anything to jiggle. So for me, I'm like, I want to experience that.
Well, we know for sure that if you've cooked a brisket long enough and it doesn't jiggle, then something's wrong. And if
Right.
it is jiggling, you've done everything right.
We've experienced the raw.
Yeah, we've experienced,
Many
having
people
to
have.
change
I
how to
have for
cut it.
sure. Absolutely. Happens to everybody.
Oh, quick question. Do I understand that you concreted your whole backyard?
A side yard. We
A
did
side
leave a portion of grass in the back for the cats to frolic in.
Okay, and everything else has a cooker on
Pretty much.
it. You wouldn't have to mow, honey.
Yeah.
All right, onward.
Okay. So the last two questions are more cooking questions, actual food questions. Our friend Kevin asks, excluding bell peppers and jalapenos, what is the best pepper to use with, and then chicken, pork, or beef? And what smoke would you pair with it?
Peppers, not jalapenos or
Bell peppers.
bell pepper. Well, I mean, if you like the Mexican flair, I mean, poblano peppers are really good to use. Hungarian wax peppers are good on the smoker as well. I happen to be a huge fan of jalapeno peppers. If he's worried about heat, I would say chop the tops off, half them down long ways, and scrape the fins and the seeds out. And then if you put them on the smoker, the longer you cook them, the more heat gets cooked out of them. So after 25, 30 minutes at 350 degrees, there might be a little bit of heat, but it's going to be more pepper flavor than heat. So again, heat changing things certainly applies to the jalapenos. As far as smoke flavor goes, let's be honest. If anybody's going to sit there and tell you that they can take a bite of meat and go, oh, well, that was made with oak, they're lying. There are very, very, very few woods that you're going to sit there and be able to nail like it's a wine of some sort. What you're getting is this heavier woods, mesquite, which, by the way, might be the only wood that people would be able to know off the palate right away because of how heavy it actually is.
Yeah, I hear that's an acquired flavor.
I like it with steak. I don't mind it with steak. So I've done it with turkey before, too, when I was just in the beginning, because that was the only wood I could find at Home Depot. So I smoked everything with mesquite at that point. But it wasn't too bad, but it goes great with beef. Mesquite is really good. Oak is also a heavier wood. Hickory is also a heavier wood. And then when you get into the lighter woods, so that's going to be more your fruit woods. So you have, we use cherry a lot up here. It's indigenous up here in the Ohio area. Also apple, also orange as well. So those are nice lighter woods that are going to go well with, chicken's a delicate meat. So I don't know if you want to put a thicker or a heavier palated smoke on chicken. If you want something a little bit more complementary to the fact that chicken is just more delicate, apple wood is going to be good. Cherry is going to be good as well. Maybe a hickory as well if you want to go a little heavier on that. So those are my recommendations. But don't ever fall for somebody telling you that they can pull a species of wood after having a taste of barbecue. That's total BS.
Wow. Where does pecan fall in here?
Pecan is probably in the middle of that, but widely popular. I just don't have any access to it. Otherwise, I would use that's competition wood choice of the best of the best. If they can get their hands on pecan, they will also find people that purvey pecan wood and buy it over the internet. They love it that much. So that is a stalwart competition wood. It's very good.
That seems to be the only chip we got right now, isn't it? Like, where do we get it from?
We've got a couple others.
Oh, do we? Okay.
We've got some apple of our own that I want to chip up and.
Oh, that's true.
Apple is so great. It doesn't really have a high BTU, so you want to be using it alongside of charcoal, or you're going to have to go through it if you're running an offset pit. But I really like the flavor of apple a lot, and I use cherry almost exclusively at this point because I have a good source for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. It's nice when you have like trees around you that help.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm telling. That's what I would like to express too. Just because I'm telling you one's heavy, one's not. If you live in an area where shagbark hickory is prevalent, then use that. Just don't use a lot of it. If you sit in an area where post oak is the main wood of choice, then use post oak. Use what's indigenous to you and save yourself the extra expense of having it shipped in or driving wherever you're going to go. A couple of years ago, we had an ash borer bug issue where you couldn't take wood that was cut down over county lines. Mm-hmm. So it was illegal to take it anywhere else. So you have to be mindful of all that.
Yeah. And isn't there something that there's a lot of up here that you're not supposed to cook over? Is that black walnut?
Pine?
Well, pine. Yeah, that's love that pine tar. What else you got there, Doug?
Okay, so our last question from listener, our friend Chip Says on barbecue ribs, what temperature and for how long? And then he says, I use a grill mat to keep the liquid contained. Is that good or not? And should you flip the ribs, and how, once or multiple times or not at all?
So he's left out some key bits of information. I don't know what kind of cooker he's using. So
Right.
that's going to be a key to what temperature you might want to operate in. To me, I found that for ribs, and I use St. Louis style cut spare ribs. I'm not a huge fan of baby back ribs, but that's just my preference.
Not enough meat on them for me.
I haven't priced them out recently too, but earlier in the summer, ribs were way out of control on price, where they weren't even on my mind to actually cook for a weekend. I mean, they were unbelievably priced. So hopefully they've come back down, especially with Labor Day approaching, and I wanted to do ribs. But I'm a spare rib, a St. Louis cut guy, $275. I like to go 3 hours or until I get the color of the ribs that I want. And then I'll go into a brief wrapping period and then let them come back out into the smoke maybe for 35 or 40 minutes, depending on how they feel. And then away we go to serve. So, but again, that's going to change. If I do the same ribs in my Lang offset, that thing moves an incredible amount of air through it. So the ribs will actually get done quicker because of the volume of air that's getting pushed through that cooker than it would on a pellet cooker, just not nearly moving as much air through it as my Lang is. Same thing would go for a bullet style smoker like the Weber Smoky Mountain. So the times might be varying to what I'm saying here, but there's some key things that you want to take into account when you're doing ribs. Whatever temperature you're going to work at, keep it consistent there, because that's going to build the baseline of knowledge for you for the next cook. You should always be taking notes every time you cook, so you can say this was the temperature, this was the temperature outside, this was the temperature of the cooker, this is how long it took, the wind was blowing out of the east. And this is all basic stuff that you want to do so you can help yourself become a better cook the next time. You can always refer back and go, well, this is what I liked the last time, this is what I didn't like, now this is what I'll change, and then you'll document this cook as well. Jess Pryles from hardcorecarnivore.com makes a great book. I actually have it right here. You can't see it because you're not watching video, but it's blood proof, it's waterproof, you can document everything. I mean, it's a great resource. It's made out of stone paper, I think is what it's called, so it's really nice to prevent. You can get liquids on it of all sorts, evidently, and it's not going to degrade the paper, and you can still write on it. So it's a great Pitmaster's Journal, I think is what she calls it. So that's a great pickup. Good for a stocking stuffer coming up for the holidays for all you people. So so be mindful of that, and then I like to work off of a color initially. So there's that popular 3-2-1 method that you might hear about: 3 hours in the cooker, 2 hours in the foil, and then 1 hour back outside of the foil on the cooker to tighten everything up. I find depending on what temperature you're running at, the 2 hours in the foil can be an extreme amount, because what's happening in the foil is steaming and tenderizing. And if you overshoot in the foil, you basically have meat mush, like something that you would get at Damon's or Tony Roma's, or something along these lines. Back, it was just kind of like there was no texture to the meat at all. And I don't personally like that. A lot of people were convinced that fall off the bone ribs or meat mush was the sign of a perfectly cooked rib.
Yeah.
And to my palate, that's incorrect. I like to. There's a whole different thing we could talk about on that.
I'm glad you said that, because I don't like the falling off the bone mush either.
I like tender. I don't like I have to tug at it. And there's some restaurants that make them like that on purpose. But I like taking a bite from wherever it is on the bone, and all that I've bitten has come off the bone, but the rest stays on.
Yes.
Nice and tender. I mean, to me, that's a perfect rib. It's widely considered to be a perfectly cooked rib on many of the different barbecue scenes and circuits. So that's what I shoot for myself. So I like to go 3 hours at 275. Usually I get that color. If the rub doesn't come off, if everything is kind of set, that bark is kind of set up, then it can go in the foil. I like to go at an hour and then see how it looks after that with the bones kind of pulling back. Take a toothpick, kind of poke around, see how it feels. And then I'll take it out of the foil, back on to the cooker, unfoiled. And then I'm looking literally for an internal temperature of 206 to 208 degrees.
Okay.
So I will go internal temperature on my ribs. I didn't used to be like that. I used to hold and do the bend test, see if it would crack in the middle. A lot of people like to say a 1/4 inch of bone pullback from the end of the bones is also a sign. There's a bunch of different signs, but what do we know about science? it's temperature measurement. So get my temperature gauge out, and once it gets to 206, it's good with me. Then you can wrap them in cellophane or plastic wrap to hold them for another half an hour or so if you need to, and they'll still be just as good.
So in your learning days, did you ever have something literally go up in smoke, like, a conflagration that
Literally up in smoke.
Literally up in
Pit barrel
smoke.
cooker. Pit barrel cooker is known throughout the land as the hanging smoker. So it's a upright barrel smoker. You build the fire on the bottom. It's got 2 pieces of rebar that go through the top, and then they send hooks. And I put hooks, 2 or 3 bones down into the rack. And you can hang a total of 8 racks of ribs in this pit barrel cook. So it's really great for cooking a mass amount of ribs. Maybe I lost track of where I was in the cook. Who knows what happened? And I came out to the back porch to what seemed to be the pit barrel cooker now on fire. So I opened the top, and 2 of the racks had gotten too tender. My fault for not checking on it. And the hook ripped through the ribs, and down onto the coals they went. So it was a smoking mess. And as soon as I popped the top on that thing, the oxygen rushed in, and that thing shot up in flames like it was an industrial-sized Roman candle. It was epic. It was also a wild waste of 6 racks of ribs.
Yeah. Oh, no. And people from miles around because she flames shooting into the air.
But I can tell you, that went into my journal for next time I did ribs on the pit barrel cooker.
Or what not to do.
That's
Now,
right.
I've heard of pit barrel smokers, whatever, when Rob Carson had a show on Spoonie. A couple years ago now, and he had one of his advertisers was pit barrel smokers, and so I was always kind of intrigued by that. We looked them up once, haven't pulled the trigger on it. Also, that's where I heard of Meathead, Goldwyn.
Yeah, he's a big fan. Just call him Meathead.
Meathead.
Anything else, he might take you to task.
Yeah, I was okay. I'll be careful. But very engaging. It was a lot of fun. So I approve of your guests, and I approve of your advertisers. I do have a question for myself. Well, when you are putting together a quick, say, a basting sauce or a marinade that turns into a basting sauce, what do you do? Like real quick, I got to grab 5 things and make a sauce.
If I'm going to sauce anything, I'll make my own barbecue sauce. And then right at the end, like for ribs, sometimes if I want to glaze a pork butt for presentation, right at the last 15 minutes or so, because my homemade sauce is more of a thinner sauce. So it could, I guess, technically be classified as some kind of a glaze, I guess.
Okay. Well, we don't always, every now and then it's like, oh, let's do something different. But this one day I just was faced with just plain old chicken breast. And I'm like, ugh. And that inspires me to put something on it.
Yeah.
And I make limoncello from scratch. And so we had limoncello, and I just glugged some of that into the bowl. And I put an egg, salt, pepper, garlic, a little oil. That was outstanding. I was very pleased with myself for just throwing stuff together.
Well, good.
But the lemon and the sweet and the alcohol was all right in the bottle. So it just made it really easy. Oh, I was going to ask you. So what is in your, your last minute glaze? Is there a lot of sugar in it?
So it's basically 2 cups of apple cider vinegar, a cup of ketchup, and then there's garlic powder, onion powder. There's a half a cup of brown sugar, half a cup of honey, a cup of
Ooh, that's
water,
sweet.
black pepper, chili powder, and that's what I can remember off the top of my head.
Okay, no,
So
that's
nothing too crazy. You should, celery salt. There's celery salt in there too. I love celery salt.
sure. Well, that certainly works, and it's it's like, well, you're putting candy on.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more of a vinegar-based sauce. It's not like sweet Kansas City style thick kind of stuff, which I think is why it also is a good sauce for a lot of different things. But then it can also work as a glaze as well because it is on the thinner side.
Yeah. I'm thinking about sauces. I wanted to bring up that I remember your guest from a couple of weeks ago. She had this amazing story in your second half.
Jackie Taylor.
Jackie
from the Root Check
Taylor.
program.
Yes. Have you heard of dinosaur barbecue sauce?
Yes, I've had him on my show.
Oh, you
Yoga
have?
Island Barbecue. Yes.
That started about an hour away
No,
from
I have the
me.
#1 barbecue show.
Of course.
How dare you?
Sorry. I'm sorry. But that started about an hour away from us in Syracuse.
They kind of started just going out and doing events, and then they put together a restaurant in Syracuse. And
Yeah. Oh,
now they've got a few.
yeah, and they got known for doing the food at rendezvous.
Yep.
Right. So they, what the heck, would just make a thing out of it. So,
Right.
but those are local people. It made me think of that when you had her on. Yeah, it's amazing. Just the dinosaur barbecue section of the grocery store is several feet long.
Oh yeah, very popular.
I do like their stuff actually. There's and they've made so many different sauces since they started out. It was kind of like, oh, and you and who was it? Was it Meathead? You were trying to think of how many different barbecue sauces there were, and like who had heard of Open Pit. Like back in the 70s, Open Pit and Kraft were the barbecue sauces you could find in the store.
Yeah, think about how bad that was back in the 1970s.
Yeah,
I've gotten older and done more history searching. I've realized that the mid 70s through the mid 80s were some of the worst times ever on the history of the earth.
Yeah, well, to a degree, there were things about it, that's for sure. I think, well, these days we might be challenging that, but but the Open Pit was actually, well, since you only had two to choose from, Open Pit was my go-to sauce, and then I discovered, hey, there's more out there than Open Pit.
Yeah, I mean, I was an Open Pit fan, except you just couldn't really eat it with your hands because it would stain you orange.
Yeah,
which was
right.
weird.
Oh my word. Do you have, okay, what does your families love to have you cook for them on the grill or saucy or side dishes?
Grill, it's look, I've raised what we would call steak snobs in the world. So the benefit of this position is getting to have some of the most luxurious meat you can get your hands on, and we'll share it around. The girls have grown up on prime, Wagyu, A5, Kobe. I mean, it's they've run the gamut. So if you go and get a choice steak all of a sudden, they're like, the hell is this? How dare you put this in front of me? And I was like, well, you ladies have really taken it to a different level here, and you might want to back it down. This is my lifestyle we're living. This isn't your lifestyle that you're living.
Yeah,
So
they better find them some rich man.
Right, you better. They like steak on the grill, no doubt about it. On the barbecue, everybody loves pulled pork. That has been, for as long as I've been in it, that was the very first thing that I ever did when I got my Weber Smoky Mountain. That's a lie. I actually did a rack of ribs, and they were horribly average. But after I figured out how to use it, the next thing I did was pulled pork. And it was great, and it's been a mainstay at the house. The girls will love it. They ask me to always have some on hand, easy to vacuum pack, and then just drop in a hot pan of water and bring it back to life, and it's great. So those are their two favorite things.
Yeah, I have found that you really have to try hard to screw up pulled pork.
That's very forgiving.
Yeah. That's why it works for me, I think. Side dishes. What do they like for side dishes?
We do baked beans. So I'll take the Bush's regular baked beans, drain them, and add a very small, very, very small onion. To that, some yellow mustard, brown sugar, and then I take Stubbs original barbecue sauce, a bottle of it, and then pour it in there, and then onto the smoker for a handful of hours. If I have any extra barbecue meat, like extra brisket or pulled pork left over, I'll chop it up, throw it in there as well, and that's always a hit. Also, like appetizer / side dish, we'll do atomic buffalo turds. So you take a whole jalapeno, you cut it in half lengthwise, you scrape out the guts, and then you stuff it either side with a mixture of browned breakfast sausage mixed with cream cheese. And then you put a piece of bacon around it and onto the cooker at 350 degrees for about 20 minutes until the bacon is done. And I'm telling you right now, if you make 700 of these, all 700 will be gone. You can't make enough. I don't know why it is. I've made 10 before. I've made 50 before. It doesn't matter. Same amount of people will eat them all. They're just delicious in every way possible. In sauce, outside of sauce, all by themselves. And now you can get as creative as you want. You can stuff them with pulled pork or brisket or just cheese or whatever you want. But that's the winning combination for us. My oldest, who's in college right now, when she comes home to visit, it's always, I don't care what you make as long as you make atomic buffalo turds as well.
That's just a little bit a little takeoff on what we have found to be hugely successful around here is, what do we call them? The jalapeno poppers.
or
But what was it? Oh,
armadillo eggs.
armadillo eggs. I've heard the Duck Dynasty people call them, but it's like you said, the jalapeno, the cream cheese, and the bacon. But the addition of sausage in there sounds quite intriguing. I think
Oh,
we
it's
need to
delicious.
try that.
Very good.
Yeah, that's a huge hit around here. We try to do kind of like an hors d'oeuvre buffet on Christmas Eve when the guys come home. And but anyway, we always have them. But here we are at the end of the show. You always sneak up on me, Douglas. But anyway, we've really been enjoying Greg Rempe, and go listen to his show because it's great. But we need to remind you to come back to the table, hug your family, hug your friends, and do remember to make every meal a memory. And barbecue too. So always remember to barbecue, right, Greg?
That's right. And thanks for having me, for crying out loud.
Thank you so much. Do come back again.